Today we're going to be talking about some of the considerations you can make when you're choosing the yarn that you want to use for your project. So really this breaks down to essentially how to read the label on your yarn. There are really only 5 things that I want to point out. So that's the yarn weight, the yarn fiber, the color, the length of the skein, and then the care instructions. Now let's talk about yarn weight. So if you followed along with my beginner's knitting series, then you already know that the yarn weight just refers to the thickness of the strand. So it comes in 8 standard sizes numbered 0 to 7, which is silly, but that's how it comes. So when you're doing something that requires kind of lacy details or really intricate work, then that's where you'll start with on this end. You'll have your lace yarn. Getting into a little thicker strand with the superfine and fine, that's typically what you'd want to use if you're working a pattern like socks or even baby clothes. So moving up in thickness again in the light medium range. So this is really where you see a lot of work for clothing. So things like sweaters or scarves or hats, that kind of work. And this is really where I live. So I'm a medium girl. A lot of my work is that number 4 weight yarn. And then as you get into that larger thickness, the bulky, super bulky jumbo, that's what you see when you're working on something like a blanket or even a throw rug. So that's the thicker but really sturdy yarn. Next up, yarn fiber. So for me, I tend to use 100% acrylic yarn. So the reason I choose this is it tends to be pretty inexpensive. There's a lot of color varieties. It's very versatile for the type of work I do. So I'll give you guys the kind of warning. I am a hobby knitter. I do not make my own clothes. I make accessories. I make little gifts and goodies. So acrylic suits my needs just fine. But one of the kind of drawbacks to that is that it's man-made. It's a synthetic fiber. And so if you're looking to work with natural fibers, you'd probably want to choose either cotton or wool. So with cotton, it's a little more expensive than your man-made fibers and your acrylic yarns, but it comes in a wide variety of colors. The strand tends to be a little stiffer, so it's a little less forgiving as you work, I should say. But again, it's a really great option if you want a man-made fiber. The other choice that's really common is wool. So wool is extremely popular for when you're making clothes. I've never personally worked with it, but I hear very good things. I think the only kind of caveat warning here is that sometimes it can cause allergic reactions and it can be a little bit itchy. So just be careful when you're choosing your skein that you feel one, or you find one, I should say, that feels very comfortable to you. Now let's talk color. So for me and the kind of work I do with my very cutesy projects, I tend to try to match the color of the yarn I'm using in my project to something that kind of exists in the real world. So that's why color is very important to me. So each brand of yarn has their own color naming and color numbering. So that's what you want to look for. And I also want to make you guys aware of dye lots. So a dye lot just refers to how they add the color to the strand of yarn. So I tend to work with no dye lot yarn. So that just means that there's no color variation between the skeins no matter when it's manufactured. But if you are concerned with dye lot, if that's something that the brand does use, it refers to subtle variations in the color between the different skeins. So just be cautious if you're switching skeins as you work, that dye lot is something to just be on the lookout for, those subtle variations in hue. Next, let's talk length. So every skein will be marked with how long the yarn is. So it's just how long is this continuous piece of yarn that I can work with. So the reason you want to kind of keep a lookout for that is it tells you whether or not you're going to need to use multiple skeins for your project. So it's a number that's, it can be given in English units, so yards typically, or metric, so just look for something in meters. And finally, care instructions. So this is like with any clothes that you wear. So you'll see in the tag, it'll tell you, yes, you can wash this, yes, you can dry this, no iron, no bleach, that kind of thing. So if you're working on a project that you intend to wear, or that can potentially get dirty, that's really where you want to look at that. If it's something that you're never going to wash, then it's less important. But if you know that you're going to get some wear and you want to take care of your project, then that's when you want to look out for those recommended care instructions. And that's pretty much it. So really, this was kind of a guide to when you're choosing yarn for a project that you've come up with on your own. If you're following a pattern, the pattern will actually tell you which yarn they recommend to use. You can make substitutions if you like. If you don't like the color they're using or the brand they're using, just try to match weights. Little bit of a word of caution, even if you're matching weights, it won't work out the exact same as whatever yarn the pattern author used. So just kind of be cognizant of that. But in general, you should be fine. See you all in the next video. Next, let's... Net... Next, let's talk... Oh! Next... Ooh. Next, let's... Ooh. Oh. Next, let's talk yarn length. No. Next, let's talk yarn length. Shit.